Welcome to the Developer Spotlight on the Full Dive Gaming Podcast. In the Developer Spotlight, we sit down with VR industry professionals. This week, Jay and Nat are sitting down with Charlie Wannason, developer of the App Lab experience Luna Episode 1 Left Behind. Charlie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, we're super excited. We played Luna. We talked about it a little bit on the other podcast, but before we get too far, we got to say a quick thank you to our sponsor, Asterion Products. They make this new Aura Asterion headset stand. This is version 2, has slots for the controllers. If you want to check them out, go on Amazon, use code FULLDIVE10 for 10% off. For people out there who haven't heard of Luna Episode 1, do you want to give them a little summary what the game is and what it's about?
It's an episodic story-driven game, sort of like a Telltale game in VR. The story is about the adventure of a small robot, the player character, and a little girl named Luna. And they're both trying to survive an AI apocalypse, and they have to help each other out. If you haven't heard of it, it's one of the highest rated games on App Lab.
That was actually how I found the game. I was looking at free games, but I was also looking to make a list of top rated free games. And this jumped to the top of App Lab. So I was super excited to check it out. How did you come up with the idea for the story?
So it started back in 2018. Like I just finished my contract working at EA, and I was trying to see if I can do something on my own. You know, I wanted to work on my own game. I like storytelling. I like VR. So I was looking to combine, new technology with my passion. I was thinking, what kind of story that I wanted to tell with VR. And I think in VR, when you have a character, it feels a whole lot more special when you interact with them. So I was trying to focus on, the relationship between the player and that companion character and put them both on a journey, going through good times and bad times and see how the relationship develops from that. It started with Luna, right? I came up with the character first, and then I came up with the plot, how, in what situation should I put them in? And I like the idea of trying to survive and having to help each other. I also didn't like too much action. So I was, giving some special powers to the player character, but then I thought it would be more interesting if you're just, a small robot, a commercial robot who doesn't really have any combat capabilities, but you are both, struggling to survive in this world. So I thought that was interesting. And I thought it would be pretty emotional in VR because normally when you look at movies or TV shows, when you see characters develop relationships, it's not you, it's not the player, it's their characters. But in VR, I feel like that feels much more personal and spatial.
For sure. And I loved one aspect where there's the voice recognition and you're saying these lines to help move the story forward. And that really, you are in it. You're not just like a passive observer. And I feel like you don't see that much in these more story-driven games because like you were mentioning with combat and stuff, that's usually how you're interacting with the world in games. And so I really liked how there's voice recognition. It brings you in, you're a character, but you don't have to be, shooting or hitting stuff. Because I get sick of all the shooter games. So I was really interested to hear, how did you set up the voice recognition mechanic in the game?
Back in my graduate school, I had some experience working with that technology in VR. And I found out that, there's a lot of limitations. Like, sometimes it doesn't work, or like if you have an accent, or if you doesn't say it with the right tone, then sometimes it doesn't work. But when it does work, it feels like magic. You are able to connect with the character. So I was willing to bet on that magic that, people will be attracted to this. But, even when it feels like a magic, it will wear off you have to have something else for the player to stay. And in my case, I hope that it is the story that keep the players here. I also like to mention something. This is not the first game that has used voice recognition in VR. There the goal. You can talk back and forth, but you don't have a storyline. So I was, building on top of that. There's another game called Impatient. It's a horror game in VR, and you can talk to a character. But that game, I would argue that you're not really building a relationship with the character you're talking to, and the story is kind of different. So I was hoping that I use voice recognition in a way that enhances the storytelling and make the player connect with the characters more meaningfully.
I definitely think you nailed it on that, because I've played Gary the Goal before, and it does just feel like, okay, you're saying stuff and whatever. But when you don't have that connection or that story, it isn't that cool. So it really does make a difference having that story and that connection with the character, that,
Mhm.
having the two together really does make it magic.
Also, the thing with Gary the Gull is that the voice recognition is open-ended. You don't have any lines. You can, try to say a lot of things, and if it's one of the expected responses, it will trigger some conditions, and the Gull will say something back to you according to the script. For Luna, it doesn't have that kind of freedom, but in a good way that kind of push the players into the storyline, into the narrative that we want them to go through. So, you did mention that it's kind of like acting, but essentially what I wanted to do is, push you through this story together with the character. And it's just the voice recognition is just, a means to it's a make believe.
You really nailed that. You're getting this world, and it's one of those games. There is a degree of you get out what you put in. And so for me, when I went into it, I was like, I'm gonna try and say every line. I'm gonna treat this like a real person. I'm gonna try to really do this. And I think that developed such a connection that the game became very emotional to me.
Yeah.
Even it was a lot to expect. The one thing that I'm thinking about the game right now in its current state, and I want to recommend this to everyone. I want everyone to try this, but there's a few glitches that made me have to restart the game a few times. And so I'm nervous to be like, go play this, because I don't want people to get frustrated. Is there fixes coming for those glitches?
Yes, within this month. I'm aware of the bugs that you mentioned, and there's also a workaround. Like if you're watching this and you are experiencing the same bug, the workaround right now is just when you grab an item, you just pull the trigger once and let go, and don't hold on to anything. We're gonna make it so that the bug is impossible to happen, like regardless of what you do. But right now, I believe the workaround is to pull and release, and then that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Good
The
to
problem
know.
is people are holding the device, they're holding the object and continuing to hold the trigger, and that's what's
Mhm.
triggering the instance with the other trigger.
Even with the bug, though, that, sometimes you'd have to restart the game. The
Mhm.
game is so good, you don't really care. It's like, it, okay, maybe I have to go back into this. Maybe I even had to try a couple times, but I don't care. I just want to know what happens next. I want to see, what happens with these characters. So, yeah, but that is exciting that there's patches coming. Just talking more about how we felt playing this game. Both of us had very emotional reactions to the game. Jeremiah cried one time during the game. I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll cry once, maybe." I was crying through the whole thing because I just loved the character so much. You just really quickly connect to Luna, and want you just want what's best for her, and you want her to be okay. And so, yeah, it's just a very emotional game. I was wondering if you've gotten similar feedback from other people about having emotional experiences to the game. I would think so.
The ratings and the reviews have been really positive. I'm not sure if a lot of people cried. They did say that they got emotional. I certainly personally didn't expect people to cry, because it's in VR. I don't want to like push you too hard, because then your
Mhm.
face might be messy. I wanted the players to get connected with the character. And there's one thing interesting, in your last podcast, you compared it to The Walking Dead, the first season, which is also my favorite game.
Mm.
I would say that, that game had hours in length to make you feel connected to the characters. And to think that you would get attached and cry for the character in Luna in just about half an hour, I think that's a that's really interesting. I wasn't expecting that actually, but yeah, glad to hear that you found it emotional.
Yeah, I think you just did an amazing job of just the things that happen in the game
Hmm.
and the moments with Luna just really gets you. It's like just so quickly you feel so connected to her. And I think it also, like we talked about, saying the lines that are in there and really, for me, made that emotion come forward more because I
Hmm.
also just, cry with stuff a lot in a good way, but it's like the act of talking and saying the things also I think kind of brings up the emotions.
I think it's not just me though. I think it's the magic of VR, because like even if you look at The Walking Dead, Telltale The Walking Dead, the story happens and revolves around two characters that you're just watching. Like sure, you have some agency, you can like make choices and control what they do, but like at the end you're just watching them react to each other. But in VR you have this effect of like I'm doing something for her and she's doing something for me. It gets personal. And like you mentioned, you get to choose your name. I wanted, if I could, I would have allowed for any English name, but there's a limitation, so I have to like give you the freedom of choosing one of the two names, but it's still personal. It's still it's customizing. It's like it revolves around your choices, and hopefully that makes you feel even more personal.
I do wonder if some people's feedback, they haven't mentioned the emotional part as much because your game has a
Mhm.
structure to it where episode 1 right now people can get chapter 1 for free. And chapter 1 is great, but it's not the part that got me at all. And then you pay $1.99 to unlock the other 4 chapters. $1.99 one time unlocks 4 whole chapters. Now, it was
Mhm.
at like chapter 4 or 5 that it was like, okay, this got heavy for me. And so a lot of people probably only played the first free chapter, I'm guessing, and didn't see the rest of it. Or even like our other host, Lipnox, he had only played that one, didn't know more had come out since. So he wanted to go and try the other ones. So I'm thinking about that price structure, how you added that over time, but also it wasn't necessarily announced to everyone, hey, there's new chapters now. What do you think? Is that the right price? Is that the right way to drop these? Or would it be better to maybe drop them all at once?
So here's what happened. In late 2021, I released the free demo. That wasn't my plan, but like as I was working on this, I got nervous and I was scared if people were gonna like this. So I decided to make the first chapter, free and available as soon as it's ready, just to get some feedback. So after that, the feedback has been positive. People kept saying like, "Oh, I want more of this. I want to see what happened. What's gonna happen next." Last year, I think in August or November, I released the full game. So after that, I tried to promote it. I did run ads on social media, but I didn't have a lot of budget, so maybe not a lot of people heard about it. About the price point, I had a talk with my potential publisher. They were interested in publishing the game actually, and they said, they would help push this onto the main store, but they wanted 20% of the revenue. So I was like thinking hard about this, because usually when you get a publisher, they will help you with the production, you know, and so I was like, I worked really hard on this game, and like I don't want to say like they didn't help with anything, because like the percentage of the revenue goes up and down depending on how much help they provided you or how much funding they helped you with. So they said 20% of revenue is already low. At the end, I decided that I would try my luck and see if I can push it onto the main store by myself. So I have to set the price point really low at first. If it does get onto the main store, and as somebody has suggested to me, one of the players, they send me a tweet. They send me a direct message and saying that the price is too low. If I get to onto the main store, I can adjust it later. That's something to consider. At the end of the day, when I make a game like this, I'm totally prepared to fail financially, because it's a hard sale. There's no retention, there's no multiplayer. If I don't get to make another one, I at least want people to experience this as much as possible. So hence the low price point.
Well, I hope you can make more episodes.
There's a small chance. I can talk about that as well. So when I made the first episode, I did get some funding from Oculus through one of their initiative programs. But after that, they right now that program is not open. So, and I'm not sure if I can get more money from the same channel. But looking forward, if I were to be able to make more games like this, I would have to get some funding. If not from Oculus, then from someone else. And there's something going on that I cannot talk about, but we'll have to wait how that plays out. If I get to make this, of course I'm gonna make it. It's my passion to do storytelling. But if not, I'll see if I can adjust a little bit. Try to pivot and see if I can make games that will be more popular but still have a great storytelling element.
I love story-driven games, and I want to see more of that for sure, especially
Yeah.
for VR games. And one of the things too that made me get really emotional in this game, without giving any spoilers, Luna was different from other people. I just wanted to give her a hug and I couldn't because I was a robot. But do you think that Luna being different from other people helps people playing the game that maybe feel marginalized in society feel more connected to the story?
Yes, definitely, or at least I would hope so. When I designed the character, this was back in around 2018, 2019. It was the age of superhero movies. And I like them. I like those movies, but I watched them and I thought to myself, the heroes, sure, they have some flaws, but like they're all either good looking or really smart or really, really rich. So I was thinking if I can create a hero or a heroine who is just an average person and has some flaws, and then that flaw maybe turn out to be a superpower. That was the idea. So yeah, I was hoping that it has a voice that will help people who feel not so accepted in the society, and have the courage to be themselves and accept who they are.
That's so awesome. I love it.
Well, I think one thing that you really nailed in this, a lot of games, they can fail a little bit in voice acting. And I felt like this, when I was at least especially talking to the main character, they did a great job of conveying their emotions through their voice and stuff.
I saw him a few days ago. He was still alive.
So I was wondering, what did it take to find these voice actors?
I will take that as a compliment because this is my first time directing something like this. The talent that we found it on Fiverr.com.
Oh, wow.
So it's an online website where you can find, freelancers and people who do voice acting. I would say that it's challenging because it's not directing in the sense that you're in the same studio and then you're providing feedback all the time, but you ask them to read the script, and then they send you over their recordings, and then you give them some feedback. It goes back and forth. It takes a little more time, but it was a good experience.
That's so awesome. I just think they did a really great job with the voice acting. And that's something that is really important in a game, because if the voice acting is bad, it's going to really take you out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these days it's really cheap. I would say that as long as you're not like, going to LA and like finding the top talent, then you can get it done starting at 10 or 15 or $20.
Wow.
Yeah, depending on the scale of your project.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you talked a little bit about how there's a slight possibility of continuing the story, and I saw that your website has a spot for episode 2. Are there any plans for when episode 2 will be released, or does that kind of depend on other factors?
When I worked on the first episode, I was hoping that there would be at least 3 episodes, and I wanted to see, the people's reaction, if they buy the first episode and then go on to the next one and the next one. But unfortunately, I didn't have enough resources, namely time and money, to do all 3 of them. So I did the first one, and now I really hope I get to make more of this, but it depends on a lot of things. Depends on if I get funding on this. So we'll just have to wait and see. There's something going on that I cannot talk about, but hopefully there's a chance that I get to make more of this. If you play the game and you like it, please go to the store page, leave a rating or a review. That will help not just me, but it will show that this kind of game can survive, and there's a demand for it. So yeah, support us.
Definitely. I think that you did a splendid job, and I've done before we met or before I even knew, we've had on some lists and people have asked about it, and I've heard back. They were like, wow, that was really cool. So what else was there that we didn't cover that you'd love people to know? Is there anything else you'd like to tell about your studio or the games themselves?
I'm not a studio. I'm just a solo developer. But
you're a single person studio. Yeah, I know. When you said that surprised me. I really thought there had to be more people working on this.
I wanted to talk about this genre because I think there's a place for it in VR. It just has to be discovered, because a lot of things that take place in VR, I think people take it for granted. They go to shooting games or sports games. Those are the obvious ones, but there's also something else that feels like it has its place in VR. And I think storytelling is one of that. If you haven't tried this game yet, give it a try and see how you feel afterwards. If you're into story-driven games, but you don't have a VR headset, or if you can borrow a VR headset, I definitely recommend you check it out, because it's really cheap. It's $199, and try to compare, the feelings of watching a movie or a TV show to playing this. So I think this has a future. The feelings that you get out of it is different, and it feels a lot more personal than watching a traditional medium. So yeah, I just recommend you check it out.
Yeah, and you can't go wrong, because the first chapter at least is free. And I even asked in the original video when I talked about this, I was like, I would love to know if anyone out there tried the first chapter and then didn't pay the $1.99 to do the rest, because there was no way after that first chapter I wasn't going to pay that. It could have been a lot more money and I would have paid it, because I wanted to see what was going to happen to this character. And I think that the VR scene, the whole world of VR, yet it's still kind of struggling to find how to do storytelling right and where to go. But like Baobab Studios, who's made a bunch of different, not quite as interactive as yours, but a bunch of different experiences like this, has shown it is very possible. But we have to figure out, how do we drive the narratives in the right way? How do we keep the user's attention on where we need to see? 'Cause it's not like a movie that's only showing you one scene at a time. You can turn and be looking the wrong direction when something happens and miss it. So there's a lot, it's complex. And that has to all be sorted. But there is nothing more powerful to me than what VR can do by putting you in the shoes of a character and taking you through their journey when it comes to creating empathy. And you did something here that was really magical. That's why you're one of the first guests we actually sought out and brought you on. Most everyone else who's ever been on this podcast asked us to come on, said they wanted to come on and talk to us. But after I played this, I was like, we got to find this person that made this and talk to them. So kudos.
Wow, thanks so much. Yeah, I'm. It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be invited. Yeah, thank you.
We're so happy to have you on, and I am so thankful. I really appreciate you bringing this story to VR, because there is just too much of all these shooter games and action games. It's like, okay, we have enough action, we have enough shooters, we need stories, we need something different. And how about let's use VR to create more empathy, to bring people together instead of just like shoot everybody. So I really appreciate that.
Well, we'll make sure, of course, there's going to be a link in the description for anyone who's listening or watching to go try this out themselves. Check out that first chapter for free. And if you like it, you buy it, make sure, of course, leave a rating. I've got to say, you say it was an honor to be invited here, but it was an honor to meet you and to talk to you about this, because I haven't had a game hit me that hard in a very long time. So one more thank you. Really, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It's been so great to hear from you.
Thank you.
Well, hey, if you're out there and you're listening to this podcast, remember, you can come see some of the game footage here on YouTube, or if you're here on YouTube, remember, we're everywhere to go with you on audio platforms. So make sure the podcast is here for you. If you're out there, you're throwing out some nice ratings, you can also rate and review us. We appreciate that too. But if you've been thinking about VR for a while, this might be finally the one that brings you in, and it's time to just dive on in.